Hello, San Francisco, and welcome once again to the Angelic Troublemakers. I'm your host, Alan Jones, and on today's program, Criminal Cops. I am putting this in quotation marks because I borrowed the uh, phrase or the title based on something that I read in San Jose Mercury News. I have a saying, and I had it hashtag badges for brains when I post or am reposting or commenting on something dumb that law enforcement is engaged with. Well, there's something that happened that it was not only dumb, but we would have probably never heard of criminal cops if it had not been for the fact that in the state of California, the Attorney General's office apparently, by mistake, sent some information to a reporter. Now, when I say by mistake, I just don't know how in the world this type of a mistake could happen. I think somebody did it on purpose. But when the cat got out the bag, the Attorney General of the state of California, Becerros, he sent out a email immediately telling the reporter that information you got should be destroyed at once. And it is criminal just to possess it. What was it? It was a list of criminal cops held by the state of California and their various charges. Now, do you really think that people are dumb enough in uh, are dumb enough in journalism that they're going to take something juicy material like that and just say okay, and then just tear it up or throw it away? What did the a journalist do? He published it. And I thought, my goodness, if you're dumb enough to send journalists some information that they shouldn't have, uh, that's just too bad. But it is disturbing to know that out of the 79,000, 80,000 law enforcement that there may be in the state of California, it may seem small that there was 1,000 about who were cops who committed crimes and are still on the job. Now, if you commit a felony, you can't be a law enforcement officer. But when you have felony charges reduced to misdemeanors, you get to skate. Now, when I found this out, I did something I had to do because this blew my mind. As you know, I have a website. And the title of this website is CaliforniaClemency.org. I've created this website with the sole purpose of changing the clemency process in the state of California to where people can really get justice who have been denied justice. I will say that as I read the almost pinkish color, where it says clemency is the most powerful tool in criminal in our criminal justice system. 21st century justice demands a change in who controls this power. And in the white, it says power to the people to pardon people. Well, I understand that there are sometimes law enforcement who get caught up in whatever, and I have a certain angst. I cannot handle when law enforcement officers, who we all will agree should be held to a higher standard, decide they want to commit a crime. Well, some of the crimes that were talked about in this series, most of them were DUI. Second on the list, domestic violence. Now, I understand that if you have been accused or convicted of a domestic violence issue, you can't possess a firearm. So how is it that in the state of California, officers who have committed domestic violence against their family members, their wives, estranged wives, girlfriends, and such, are able to possess firearms? Something's not right. Now, I'm not going to mention his name, but I was disturbed to learn that the second in command, I read this in another article earlier this year, the second in command at the San Francisco Police Department is a man who has 2 DUIs on his record. I think, now don't quote me because I'm not going to look it up. I think one was a hit and run. But the thing is how is this leading to push you up to second in command? Our last police chief, he was involved in some shenanigans. He too, still able to be top cop in San Francisco. There's a list of maybe 1,000 different officers who have used police data inappropriately. In other words, say you're a police officer and you have a problem with your girlfriend, she split on you, and you find out, I can find out where she is by searching police records. You can't do that. Well, many officers have done that. In this story that I heard, a police officer was being sued. And this police officer went in and got information on the 2 people suing him, and wrote them bogus tickets. This is 5 years after the incident. Now, if you're going to hold a grudge, you don't need to be no law enforcement officer. Now, all of these different crimes, from DUI to manslaughter. One officer fell asleep at the wheel, crashed and killed some cyclists. Another officer was racing to the scene of a call, and he recklessly killed two people, hit them, and boom, dead. They're still on the job. I don't get that. All of the things that we see our law enforcement officers getting away with, and when I say only 1,000 on this data breach that they were stealing records that they shouldn't have had, and the other ones, criminal convictions. Now, I understand that there are some police officers who are in prison. They need to be there for what they have committed. Some of them committed sexual offenses and are in prison, but there's some who committed them and they pled down and they weren't in prison and still able to hold a law enforcement position. Now, when I read one of these articles, because if I may give credit to ProPublica, San Jose Mercury News, the Bay Area News Group, and a few others, they compiled all of this. They did the searching. And they found all of these strange stories of law enforcement misconduct. But one asked the question, one person interviewed asked the question, what job can you think of where you hit and kill two people? Can you keep your job? When you kill them with your vehicle and you're able to stay on the job. Now, did the families get millions of dollars? I believe they did. That's not the point. I don't get it. And so, with all of the things that are going on in today's issues of cops against many communities, in particular the black community, it's because a lot of black folks, they know the shenanigans of the police. And because they know the shenanigans of the police, that's why they're not giving them the respect that I'll admit police are entitled to. The fact that we have such a forgiveness for law enforcement who do wrong, I just, no. I mean, I'm a forgiving individual, but when it comes to the silly excuses, you know, he had a 30-year career and then he's caught going into people's private records through the use of his police badge, breaking the law. What's the fine? $150. Able to retire, keep his $75,000 a year pension. These are the stories that they're telling. Well, back to my California clemency. I believe that we need to take a look at those who are locked up, and a lot of them deserve a break. But after I learned of this information of these officers who are getting away with all kinds of crimes. Now, when I say that they were caught and are still on the job, that doesn't say anything about those who are caught and who aren't caught and committing these crimes. I mean, you look at drunk driving, cheating on time cards. Let me tell you about cheating on time cards. A man was sentenced to 25 years to life for cheating on a driving test. Santos Reyes spent 11 years in prison, and then the California voters passed the amended three strikes law, and he was able to get out. And once he got out, California did him dirty again, and they deported him immediately to Mexico, leaving his two children, to have to go back to Mexico to see their father now. Now, that's wrong. When he went in, they were little toddlers. When he came out, they were teenagers. And he was immediately deported. Now, can you imagine immediately deporting somebody because their third strike was cheating on a driving test? Well, that's exactly what happened to Santos Reyes. But if you're law enforcement, you can get your job back. Brutalizing family members, killed others with their recklessness on the road. But it's thanks to the weakest laws in the country for punishing police officers' misconduct, the Golden State does nothing at all to stop these officers from enforcing laws. Now, I have to say that when I look at police, you will see me give them an awful lot of respect. But they don't know what I'm thinking in my head. What am I thinking in my head? Are you on this side of the law or that side of the law? And it's a forced habit based on the countless stories that I've heard of law enforcement doing the wrong thing. Now, am I against law enforcement? Of course not. If we don't have law enforcement, we have no law. We need law enforcement. But when we give them this responsibility and we give them all the perks, being able to skate on crime is not a perk for law enforcement, in my opinion. Therefore, when I revised some of the language that's in California clemency, I decided, hey, when let me see if I can look it up. When oh, come on. When I wrote this out, I put in a rule down here. And if you see my little arrow, I know you can't see exactly what I wrote there, but I instituted or inserted something called a K rule. Now, we won't go into discussing why you call it a K rule. That's for another time. But I want people to know that this K rule, this rule places restrictions on how law enforcement prisoners can use this new clemency process due to the fact we all expect more from law enforcement. Now, let me describe to you what California clemency is. California clemency is a invention of mine to where I say it could reduce the prison population by more than half safely. And I'm no dummy. I'm not going to create something where people can use it as a get out of jail free card even though they're bent on committing crimes. That's not my style. And so I have created something that if you read it, and I'm not going to read it here, you'll find out that there would be a new clemency system to where a person who is convicted of a certain crime and has been treated unjustly by the courts or the prison system, the process, can bypass all appeals by a constitutional amendment and take it to a 5-member board in the county that sent him or her to prison. Who are going to sit on these boards? Well, it's obvious to me that people who vote and people who sit on criminal and civil juries are best suited for this. I don't want professionals per se. I want common sense people on these boards. Why? Because common sense peoples are who we use on the juries that send a lot of people to prison. And so if we're going to trust people to send them to prison, I say we should trust people, common sense thinking people, to set these individuals free. Now, all these criminals say, I didn't do it. Well, of course I got some safety mechanisms in here to where this system will not be misused. You're going to have to trust me on that. The documents are there. And I'm going to be in the next year telling whoever I can find or whoever's willing to listen that I have come up with something that I believe is going to help an awful lot of people who don't belong in prison, and some who do belong in prison have a little more room for their to run around with. I'm not finished with my website, but I will say I feel a little bit more comfortable because I have made this provision for criminal cops. If a police officer is going to commit crimes and go to prison, California clemency has a provision in it that if the, shall we say, the prison population gets too much, then we will be able to use state prison records. Those who have the least discipline will be in line to petition the California clemency boards in their community to be released early. Now, of course, that don't mean murderers, rapists, child molesters are going to be able to go to the front of the line. It don't work that way. I ain't going to, no. But there are some low-level offenders. And yes, I know, if you have a whole bunch of low-level offenders out fighting the rich man's fires in the hills that we are currently doing, I'm saying that there are some low-level offenders who don't belong in prison. And I am annoyed at the slave labor of having them fight your fires, and the moment they get released, they couldn't get a fighting job to save their life because of the rules. So, I'm saying that police who are in prison go to the back of the line. Now, in my heart, well, you might think that way. In this rule, only police who have been falsely imprisoned can petition the California Clemency Boards, as I see it. Other than that, they get no special treatment. Why? They got a whole bunch of special treatment while they were out, and they didn't appreciate what we entrusted them with. And so it's limited on the way I see it and the way I'm going to have to sell this issue to the people of California. But I honestly think that it has a chance. I will have to do some hard work, but I'm telling you, people, we have got to get more serious about who we're sending to prison, who we're letting out of prison, and who controls who we let out from prison. Now, I mentioned last week I was impressed by the fact that there was, in the early stages of California's three strikes law, 2 jurors who refused to go along with the 25-year to life sentence for a man who stole a bicycle. And the judge threatened to throw him in jail because they wouldn't go along with the group and convict the man. But the judge blinked. And he blinked because some people know when something is wrong, and that judge, he just, nah, I can't do this. And so I know that there are some people who are willing to take a stand and say, no, this person, yes, you did wrong, but you don't need to be in jail or prison 10, 11 years for this particular crime. If you have committed a crime, you should serve the time. We've heard that saying all along. But I'm saying more than half the people who are in prison don't belong there. And California clemency, over time, I claim, will reduce the prison population safely, keeping the most egregious acts of criminal conduct safely behind bars. And might I add, this, I claim, is even safe for the staff, because with less people in prison, common sense should say there's going to be less shenanigans, riots, and stuff like that. And though I'm always modifying my new clemency project, I'm happy to say I think I'm going to get real excited about this coming year, and we're going to see a lot of things turn around in the coming years. Until next time, stay tuned and watch out